asked over and over again. What are we when we're no longer the pencil with which God writes, nor the hole in the flute through which God plays? Which is really the same question as asking, where are we? What is this place that lies beyond the three levels of existence or movement, Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss? Well, if you don't mind, I'll be a little personal. And perhaps you can tell me whether I'm there yet. Stories have been told around this area since about 1989. But the storytelling began around 1984 when I was sitting beside Divine Mother in Hawaii, and she had me telling stories with the purpose of telling everyone who she was. Now, at first, those stories would come spontaneously from somewhere, books that I'd read over a lifetime. Nothing was ever prepared, but the stories would come as I was sitting there. But over these many years, many books of stories of all kinds have been gathered. And I've read them all. And, you know, it's very random. Before we have a gathering here, sometimes a story will come and I'll need to go to the bookshelf and remind myself of the details. Sometimes, and it's a habit, almost every evening after the kitchen lights have been turned out, to go and sit in the bedside chair. And sometimes there will be the urge just to go to the bookshelf and take down a book. And a page will open, and there will be the story. But oftentimes, it will be at about 5 o'clock in the morning when the story will come. But today's story has been there for several days. But there's one thing about this, and that is that I've learned not to question. If that book opens and that story is there, there's no question. There's no thought, oh, this is not in line with what we've been talking about, or any of that. There's no question in my life. Is it obedience? If we say obedience, it's obedience to something. It's not obedience, but it is an absence of any doubt or question. Can you tell me? Is this it? Is this the place that lies beyond Satchitananda? If so, what is it then? What are we when we're no longer the pencil, nor the whole? But the story that's been there for several days to tell is an old story, and I must say it's one of my favorite stories. Maybe it's because it's Christmas time. I don't know. But it's that story about the old monastery that was nestled in a valley, in a place far, far away, and a time long ago when religion, faith, even trust were really absent in the populace. The churches were all but empty, the synagogues with just a few old souls. And this monastery falling into disrepair, its shutters for the most part closed, its garden going to ruin, unrepaired, only inhabited by a few old monks. The young people didn't go to church anymore. They didn't come to the monastery seeking entry into the brotherhood. So the old monks shuffled around the cloisters, going about their business, their daily chores. The bell would ring for them to gather for prayers, and they would assemble. But for the most part, it seemed that there was a dark cloud permanently permeating the whole place. The monks walked around with their heads bowed, not in supplication to the Lord, but in dejection and even shame. But, years and years spent in disciplines and prayer and chanting bring what we know from Hindu teachings as the siddhis, the powers, and indeed the abbot of this old monastery and the old monks themselves did have these siddhis. And it so happened that not far, just up the mountain, not too far away from where the monastery was situated, there was a retreat house for the rabbis. And the rabbi from some city would come and spend some time in the little cottage for that purpose. And the old abbot and his monks always knew when the rabbi was present. And one day, the old abbot of the monastery took out his brown robe with its cowl, placing it over his shoulders. He informed the monks that he was going to visit the rabbi. And so he did. And when the abbot and the old rabbi came together, each with their sacred book, the abbot with his Bible, and the rabbi with his Torah, sat together and compared, and they wept together at the state of the world, how no one came anymore, how the young people did not seek to enter their orders. And as they quoted from each of their books, they knew the oneness of what was bespoken in each of them. They spent many hours in this way, sometimes even in companionable silence, meditation, and prayer, as was their bent. But then the old abbot had to take his leave. And as he was at the doorway, saying farewell to the rabbi, he said to the rabbi, "Tell me, give me some advice. What can we do?" And the old rabbi looked at the abbot and he said, "The Messiah is one of you." Now, when the old abbot arrived back at his monastery, all the monks, the few, gathered around him and said, "What did he say? What did he say? What did he say?" And the old abbot said he said something very strange. He said that the Messiah was one of us. Well, all of the monks were flabbergasted at this. This was blasphemy. How could the rabbi say such a thing? But then something strange began to happen. As the old monks were walking down the cloisters with their head downcast, and it happened that one of their compatriots, their brothers, would pass them, they would look up and look at each other and have the thought, could it be? Could it be you? Brother Philip looked at Brother Michael. Brother Michael had served in this monastery since he was a youth, writing the calligraphy, drawing the wonderful, beautiful pictures that adorned the sacred books that were bringing out the words. And Brother Michael looking at Brother Philip, and could it be you? You who've walked and toiled in the garden to provide the vegetables, the potatoes, the cabbages that have fed us all these years. And then, Brother Philip, could it be you? You who played the organ with such love and ability, filling the annals, clouded though it be, with those hymns that bring succor even to the most hardened heart. And so it went on, and something magic began to happen. Light began to stream in through the shutters, until the monastery was filled with light. The monks no longer shuffled with their heads bowed down. They stood tall, met each other's eyes. They bowed in honor and respect and acknowledgement to each other. And they could not help but have the thought, as they looked into the eyes of each other, think to themselves, could it be? Is it possible? Is it me? Is it me? And as the monastery filled with light, the light seemed to permeate the gardens, and a strange and amazing thing happened. People started to come. They came to the little garden outside the monastery door, Many, many years ago they'd gathered with their families for picnics, and now they were coming again. And then, strange of all, young people, when they came to the gardens with their parents, heard the sound of the organ being played, the old monks singing their hymns, and they couldn't help but put their head in the door and creep in and kneel to listen and feel their hearts lifted. And then they began to seek the counsel, the wisdom of the old monks, and in so doing themselves were drawn into that calling that's in every being's heart, the longing to know, the longing to be one with. And so it went on. And so it goes on. But tell me, is this state, this place, the meeting place of the movement of life, or that answers the question, what are we if we're not the pencil or the whole? Is it an absence of question, an absence of doubt? I'm looking for confirmation, I want to know whether I'm there yet. Thank you, thank you.